The Bush administration is not happy with Perot. Tonight, Secretary of Commerce Robert Mosbacher called the Larry King talk show where Perot was a guest and told Perot he shouldn't be talking about something he doesn't know about. Perot joins a growing number of Americans who worry that the average citizen does not understand the true potential of what can happen if we go to war in the Middle East, or even why we are there. And he said during a visit to the News for Texas studio, we are just now debating the important issues.
Most important thing is to have a clear understanding of who can declare war in this country. The Constitution leaves no room to roam, no room to hide. If that's not enough for you, read the Federalist Papers in terms of why the framers of the Constitution gave Congress this authority.
Clearly the president feels he has the authority, and looking back at previous things that we have been involved in, presidents have not had that declaration of war in their pocket every time either. Is that a mistaken feeling on the part of a president, do you feel?
If he can read, it is. And the reason this evolved is because of the threat of a nuclear strike where the president would have to react immediately. This certainly doesn't fall into that category. We've been involved in this thing since August the 2nd. Been plenty of time to debate it, discuss it, decide whether or not to put 430,000 lives at risk. It's unthinkable in a free society. You would give one person the power to put that many lives at risk. That's the reason the framers of the Constitution put in the checks and balances. My whole interest in this thing is to make sure that every American citizen remembers the lesson of Vietnam, and that is, you first commit this nation, and then you commit troops to the battlefield. I've been very close to the military now all my adult life. I know the widows. I know their children. I know the people who have parts of their bodies missing. I have any number of friends who were killed in action. There is no more solemn duty that we, the American people, have to perform than to make the decision to commit troops to battle.
Do you feel a sense of a euphoria among people who are saying, let's go to war, let's beat this guy, is controlling things right now?
The whole thing's been programmed that way from August the 2nd. It's been presented to the American people as a giant Super Bowl II. You have two big Super Bowls in January. War is not an athletic contest. War is not a Super Bowl.
How do you deprogram it then?
By discussing all the issues. The American people need to understand the Middle East. They need to understand who Hussein is. They need to understand how this happened. This has been evolving for 10 years. Our government has made one serious mistake after another. Let's go back to 1981. He had his nuclear capability. The world decided he had it in May. The Israelis took it out in June. Saudi Arabia said they would fund his ability to build it again. Think of that. And Vice President George Bush deplored the Israeli raid. That's 1981. 1984, Hussein was doing our dirty work in Iran. He was our bad boy in the Middle East. In other words, he was Noriega for the Middle East. Noriega was Noriega for Central America.
Our puppet, in a sense.
And, well, we thought so. And he used chemical weapons against the Iranians in February. Right after President Reagan was reelected, we gave him full diplomatic status. That's hardly punishment for using chemical weapons. So rape, murder, plunder, and pillage didn't bother us then. Now we come on up. And as this is going on, our new bad boy in the Middle East, Assad of Syria, blew up 241 Marines in Lebanon and blew up Pan Am 103. Now, it would be absolutely unthinkable that we would ever embrace that man as an ally, or that the President of the United States would ever go in the same room with him. He is our ally. The President has met with him. He killed 241 Marines. Now, that's why I'm in this. You don't do that. All right, now we're up to June of this year. We were still giving them all the devices they needed to make chemical, nuclear, and bacteriological weapons. We'd given them $5 billion in financial aid. That was supposed to be for agricultural subsidies. $2 billion was spent on weapons. Agriculture Department winked. And then we gave them all kinds of taxpayer-guaranteed loans. The U.S. taxpayers will have to make good on these loans. They total over $2 billion. We're going to have to pay for them. It's a mini savings and loan problem. State Department and the White House, every time Congress tried to stop this, waived it and kept it going through June. Now then, we're down to July 25th. Ambassador Glaspie meets with Hussein. Operating on written instructions from the Secretary of State with the approval of the President of the United States, she told him, we will not become involved in your border dispute. we have no treaty with Kuwait. And in plain Texas talk, she told him he could take the north part of the country and the island. The clock keeps ticking. CIA sending up warnings, NSA sending up warnings, satellites show everything. He's got 100,000 people massed on the border. The radars are turned on in Iraq. It's obvious he's going to attack. Ambassador Glaspie leaves the country. That's good judgment on her part. But the State Department was so comfortable that he was just going to take a little piece of the country. They didn't even tell the American tourists they should clear out. They didn't tell the Americans working in Iraq and Kuwait they should clear out, and they all became hostages. Then he took the whole country, and we had Noriega too. Our bad boy had gotten out of control, and then we surged in with all these troops. And since then, we have been ever escalating the rhetoric and reducing war to first-person terms. And in my judgment, we will destabilize the Middle East with our activities, not stabilize the Middle East.
Let me come back to the member. Let me ask you first. Talk about motivation for a minute. Why have we done this? What's caused us to allow what you paint as a very clear scenario for something that should have never happened?
It's a pattern. We have a pattern around the world of picking up people like Noriega, having them do dirty jobs for us. We think they're our puppets. They're not our puppets. They get out of control. We get embarrassed, and then we want to get rid of them. What we've made is a series of really dumb mistakes in the Middle East. I would be very comfortable if our elected and appointed officials said that to the American people and said, just honest, dumb mistakes. I would say I make them every day. I can deal with that. I can't handle this cover-up. Suddenly, you know, we've got to protect the American way of life. Well, is the Emir of Kuwait living the American way of life with 70 wives, 7 personal 747s? Half the revenue that comes out of the ground in Kuwait goes in his pocket, and it goes downhill from there.
You don't buy the standard reasons that are being offered Americans for why we are
Well,
there.
the Americans don't buy it. You know, it's not the American way of life. They were fighting for jobs. I can't ask you to risk your life for my job. That puts it in simple terms. You'd think I'd lost it if I did. Then we were fighting over oil. Now, this is really interesting. Oil is the most worthless commodity in the world if you don't sell it. If you're in Saudi Arabia, you've got sand, scorpions, oil, and a few Persian rugs. The only thing you can make money out of is the oil. If the devil controls the Middle East, he will sell the oil. Japanese are rolling around on the floor laughing. They got most of their oil out of Iraq. They're not the least bit worried. They know whoever's there will sell it.
Let me establish for a moment a knowledge base. You know a great deal about this region. Where does that come from, and why do others not seem to know as much as you?
I've done a great deal of reading and studying about it. I've done business in that part of the world. It's a combination of both. But since August the 2nd, I've done nothing but study this, everything I could get my hands on.
Are some of our State Department people, our leaders, not the historians that you are, the students that you are?
Oh, they're all bright, fine, wonderful people. And the last thing I want to get into is another Watergate-type investigation. But when you foul up, you foul up. And the main thing to do is straighten it out, fix it up, and march forward. But don't try to cover up your foul up with 430,000 lives of our fighting forces. Let's go back to May of this year. I was asked to help find jobs for all the people that would be pouring out of the armed forces who thought they would have a 20-year career in the armed forces, who were going to be taken out early with none of their retirement benefits. We were going to break our contract with them. That was the mood then. Now, not only have we kept those people in, we've extended them, and we've brought in the reserves. So we sort of treat our people in the armed forces in an odd way, and these are the people who put their lives on the line for all of us, and I want to make sure that if they go into battle, the American people go with them in spirit. My purpose in being here tonight is very simple. I want every person in your audience to decide whether or not they think we should fight, and to write their congressman and tell them. Pretty simple.
Assuming the Congress says no, can we, now that we have proceeded down the path as far as we have proceeded, get out?
Gracefully, there are 1,000 graceful ways. First off, we don't understand the Middle East. Let me just give you a little. Arabs are smarter than we are. We think in black and white. They think in 6 dimensions. Anytime I deal with Arabs, I assume they will out-negotiate me, and I'm normally not disappointed. These are very bright, complex people. The way we've been handling them is amateur night. But now let's assume we need to gracefully clean up the mess. Step 1, we bring in the UN, because this is a UN problem, and we are the worst country in the world to be in the forefront of this problem because of our close ties to Israel. If we do this the way they're planning to do it, and if we have a quick military win, we will be hated by 185 million Arabs. We will destabilize the Middle East. We will not stabilize the Middle East. We will have created Assad as the new strongman. Look, we have no follow-through anywhere. We didn't follow through in Panama. The people are destitute. We didn't follow through in Nicaragua. The people are destitute. That's pretty simple stuff compared to try to stabilize the Middle East. Solomon can't stabilize the Middle East. Get the UN in. Get this activity going that the UN has started now. King Hussein of Jordan it was right on the money, even though it doesn't make sense to us. We need an Arab solution. They'll go in a room, they'll shovel the sand around, they'll come out all embracing one another. We'll never understand it. 2 years from now, they'll be chewing on one another again. That's as stable as you'll ever get the Middle East. Go back, as far back as recorded history exists, the Middle East is unstable.
You've got a very strong man that we have, in a sense, created there, however, who is also a destabilizing influence. What do we do with Saddam Hussein?
Well, he is not the strongest and most evil man. The strongest and most evil man is Assad of Syria, who we have just elevated to the throne. So we have two bad boys. On the other side, there is no George Washington. You go all over the place. You couldn't find anybody you'd like to have run your country. So you deal with what's there. When you're dealing with Hussein, there are a lot of different surgical things you could do, but before you do anything, you'd better say, who is the new man on the block going to be in Iraq? There are people in Iraq worse than Hussein.
You just don't automatically send an assassin in and take him out, as obviously has been discussed before.
See, first you go the UN route, the Arab solution route. Failing to do that, there are four concerns: nuclear, chemical, bacteriological, and Hussein. Now, taking these three out surgically, the nuclear, chemical, bacteriological is simple. We did it in Libya. The Israelis did it in Iraq once before. That can be done quickly and cleanly. That's the good news. The bad news is, as long as you have money, you can buy it again. So once these technologies exist, these rich third world countries will be able to buy them, and guess what? We'll stumble all over ourselves trying to sell it to them again. The French will for sure, we will for sure, and the Germans still have their technicians in their chemical plants, and the Russians still have 1,000 people helping them with their missiles as we sit here tonight. That's the greedy world we live in, as opposed to the wonderful world we wish we were in.
That's a rather pessimistic picture.
But no, it's a realistic picture. It's the Middle East, see? Kipling's at the end of the fight is a tombstone white, and the name of the late deceased, and the epitaph drear is a fool lies here who tried to hustle the East. We're trying to hustle the Middle East. Solomon can't hustle the Middle East. It's a weird place. We really want the oil to flow. We want to protect Israel. Those are our two main items on our agenda. The most graceful way to do that is not to go running through there with 430,000 troops, have huge casualties, not little casualties. Look at that Washington Post poll. You want to go to war? Rock 'em, sock 'em, Rambo movie, Americans, 63%. What if we have 1,000 casualties? Zoom! Only 40% want to go to war. What if we have 10,000 casualties? The reaction from the same people being polled is unthinkable.
Ross Perot rejects out of hand the notion that it's unpatriotic to question the president or the military. He says the American people are being misinformed, and someone has to tell them the truth.
When we return, we'll talk to a Texan who's in favor of giving President Bush the right to use force